primarily I'm going to be talking about outsourcing considerations. We talked about out-tasking and outsourcing. Yes, every facilities organization has a prerogative and has opportunities, depending on the business, to out-task and outsource certain parts of their operations. We had asked the FMs when we toured the 2 facilities, what do they outsource? Some outsource items that I keep in-house, and I outsource items that they keep in-house over here. So it's just a multitude of what they want to outsource and what they want to use. So we're going to cover some of those parameters. How do you select an outsourcing contractor or provider, such as a consultant? There's a matrix that we put together. Some advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing. Many of those. What do you think some advantages would be? If I was to go out and outsource or out-task a certain part of my organization, do you think there's some advantages for me to do that? Think. Depending on the size of the job and the parameters, okay? The ability. You know, we had talked about specialty contractors. In fact, we covered those last week on certain electrical systems, okay? That'd be a huge advantage because, one, they have the resources, the training, the knowledge, right? And in some cases, the education to perform that task at a lower cost than for me to go out and send someone to training. And, of course, and buy all the apparatus. Predictive maintenance would be one. We'll cover those. Contracts, we're touched very lightly. I know you've gone through contracts classes. So contracts when it pertains to the maintenance side, so we'll cover some of those. What's a service level agreement? What's the conditions of a service level agreement and why are they required? Then we'll get into some of what I would consider the housekeeping, which is general cleaning. You know, when folks talk about general cleaning in a facility, do you ever consider that as being part of the maintenance? Or there's just people that are just there? Actually, it's part of the maintenance. Typically, most custodial housekeeping entities will report to the operations and maintenance manager. And with that, part of their requirements is I want to extend the life of the carpeting. So I will have regular PMs, just like I do for electrical distribution systems or an HVAC air handler. I'm going to have periodic extractions of the carpeting. My whole sole objective is I want to keep this carpeting looking as nice and sharp as I possibly can for as long as I can. Because again, I'm contending with what? Capital. I'm contending with monetary resources. So if I don't have resources, what's going to take the top notch typically is infrastructure. So I have to pick and choose. It's probably going to be distribution systems and anything that's going to impact the building and the tenants. Carpeting is probably discretionary. So my job when it comes to cleaning, housekeeping, is I'm going to maximize the life of the carpeting. That includes the chairs, the walls, anything I got to do with lobby furniture, cafeteria furniture. It all has to be serviced. It all has to be cleaned on regular occasions. So what I'm going to share with you in those few slides is a typical schedule of a janitorial company going through the systems. And what's some of the items that they look for. And then us as facilities, why it's so important for us to continue that. Okay. Waste management is another variable to this. And that also includes bulk waste management. So I'm talking everything from pallets. I probably go through at least 50 pallets a day at my facility. And you probably ask, where do all these pallets come from? From deliveries. They'll come in back of a yellow freight truck or maybe a roadway truck or FedEx, and they'll deliver it to my site, and it's a big old piece of test gear or a piece of equipment for one of the projects. It comes in on a forklift. It sits in the shipping and receiving till the receivers are cut. It's released to the customer. They dismantle it, and then they stack the pallet up against my nice painted wall. So then what I do on a daily basis is I go around through the facility, pick up these pallets, and then I stockpile them. So one of my waste management responsibilities is to have these pallets picked up, preferably recycled. Okay. So part of that, what other type of waste management do you think I contend with? Batteries, hazardous waste, cardboard, metals, plastics, what I consider wet trash, Anything coming out of the cafeterias typically goes to the landfill. Being a LEED certified site, we have a waste stream audit that we conduct on a regular basis, and that's to ensure that the integrity of our recycling program, so that nobody's sneaking in aluminum cans into the wet trash, or nobody's sneaking in a wet trash into a whole container full of cardboard. Unfortunately, in some cases, they'll reject the entire load. Okay, so for me, it's like it's been contaminated, they can't use it, depending on where they're going to recycle and how they're going to recycle it. Some cases, if they incinerate it, then it really doesn't matter for that case. Pallets, believe it or not, they ground them up and they use them for fuel. Some of the pallets that are no longer, deemed usable, okay, or recyclable. And then recycling, that is part of facilities. That's part of what we do. So, we recycle everything. Carpeting would be one. We went through this room and the carpeting was in good shape. We'd probably come in, we'd schedule an extraction, we'd clean it real well, we'd let it dry, and then we'd stack it, we'd palletize it. And then we'd shrink wrap it, we'd label it with the lot where it came from and the date, and then we'd store it in inventory. And then the next conference room or classroom, whatever we had, we'd have the carpeting available. If we had no use for the carpeting, and then we would recycle it, typically we'll have a local recycling organization that typically will haul the carpet back to Georgia. Well, it's recycled back into carpet backing. So it goes to full gamut, it goes to full cradle to cradle. So another opportunities. What other type of recycling opportunities do you think we have at the site? The what?
I thought we covered it. Didn't we talk about glass?
Electronics. Yeah. We put electronics bin out. Typically we had the usual food groups. We had metals, aluminum cans, plastic bottles, and paper. Electronics are huge. We put out an electronics bin next to the other bins, and we tend to empty the electronic bins faster than we do any other bin. I see things in there like coffee pot makers, I see calculators, I see cell phones, I see radios. Anything to do with electronic device is actually dispositioned in this bin. Once a month, we have a recycling outfit out of Casa Grande that will come in and they'll pick up the entire crate. So we'll put it in a large cardboard container, and they'll take the entire item and they'll then dismantle them and take, the portions and components such as plastics, metals, and hazardous waste and separate those. And then the rest is ground up for reuse, okay, into other types of materials and, of course, products and so on. So electronics would be one. Another item is media, such as CDs and so on. You can ground those up too. Videotapes would be another one. Just about anything that have another use, okay, is actually being looked at very closely. Here's another one for you. How about construction material, right? Okay. You get a huge amount of new construction material, and typically it's going to be shrink wrapped. The plastic to shrink wrap comes in. Some cases, the cardboard, such as if I have modular furniture that comes into my facility, I will order it to be what I call depackaged. And what happens is that one particular semi with all the product in it is shipped just covered in shrink wrap. That's all that's protecting it. So when it arrives to my site, I just take the shrink wrap off, and there's my panel. Where if I was to order it new, I'd have all the cardboard and all the foam packing, which is almost a whole dumpster in itself. So these are just some different ways of recycling and minimizing the impact to the environment. So we'll cover a few of those as we go through. Okay. So contract support, external customer contract services provides facilities the opportunity to extend their use of skills, knowledge, and resources, just like we had talked about earlier in outsourcing. So this is just another opportunity for facilities to extend our level of support for the building and for our tenants. Okay. So the typical services that we would typically outsource would be water treatment, okay, pest control. I don't have the resources, and I definitely don't have the personnel to go around and conduct my pest management through my site. Believe it or not, I have issues with termites at my site. It's like every month I will find a termite tube somewhere. And it's just a constant. It's like, how many times do I treat this building? But how long that building has been there, I mean, I will always contend with this. So what we try to do is minimize the impact to the facility. Can termites actually impact the foundation, structural foundation integrity of your building? How? The concrete. Subterranean termites, of all things. In Arizona, we don't have the ones that eat a lot of wood. They're subterranean termites. And depending on where they attack, the substructure, okay, it's an item that could basically impact the integrity of the structural. So whenever we see the signs and evidence of pests and so on, our job is to immediately respond with that with some sort of remediation plan, extermination plan. Okay. Other items is janitorial, but can be outtasked. Landscaping. Okay. I've got 126 acres in Scottsdale. My landscaping consists everywhere from lawns to shrubbery to trees to, irrigation systems. I've got SRP irrigation that I water portions of my lawn. Some of the other items that I have is coyotes that, venture on. I mean, they're native, right, animals to Arizona. Birds. I was attacked by grasshoppers about 4 years ago, of all things, right? And, you get the call and go, Patrick, we got a grasshopper problem. It's like, how did this happen? Well, just my turn, right? Okay. Do you remember when we had all the fruit flies? Okay. I had my turn there too. And then there's another item called shrubbery spiders. So when I was first told about this, right before the freeze came and killed all my shrubs and killed all the spiders, I had to actually go out and look at this. They're small. You can barely see them with your naked eye. They're small little like black specks, but they're spiders. And what they do is they eat the plant. So you can see all these little holes, and of course the leaf dies over a while. So then I ask, it says, well, what can we do about this? Well, you can spray it, but it won't cure it because there's more spiders than there is spray, unless you spray it daily because they rehatch. So when the freeze came and it killed everything, right? Well, guess what? There's no food for the spiders. So we trimmed all the shrubbery right back down to the nubs, right? Now it's all coming back up, but guess what? I have no spider issues. At least I'm keeping an eye on that, okay? So sometimes nature has a way of solving things on its own, and this was one of those cases. But landscaping would be one. Security would be another candidate for outsourcing. Specialty testing, we covered that with some of the maintenance and some of the predictive for electrical and mechanical systems. Elevator maintenance, that's always outtasked. In fact, next week we'll cover conveyance systems. But every elevator that you see here in town, facilities organizations do not perform our own maintenance on elevators. Liability is too extreme. So with that, there's several elevator contractors that we outsource all the maintenance to. Is that a code requirement to have your elevators tested and inspected on a regular basis? Absolutely, right? Okay. So for us, and fire systems, and part of the elevator, right, all the maintenance associated to that outside of the cabinet is going to be outtasked. The maintenance on the inside of the cabinet, such as the push buttons and the phone and so on, facilities may work with that, but typically we wrap it, we bundle it, so it's all inclusive. The only thing I do to the interiors of my cab elevators is I test the emergency phone separately than the contractor, and I make sure that the inside of the cab's clean. But that's about the extent, and maybe change a light bulb if the light bulb goes out. But that's about the extent to my maintenance requirements on the elevator.
Contract that follows on with the installation?
Good question, Paul. You complete a hospital and say it has 6 elevators. So part of the infrastructure is going to require maintenance, just like your fire detection systems. So on that, I would imagine that they're going to request for proposals of the installing elevator company, if it's Centric or Montgomery or Otis, to actually provide a maintenance. So when you bid on the elevators to build them and install them, we also want to see a service quote as well, and then we'll go ahead. Whoever gets the bid will also get the service contract. Some other items would be your auxiliary power that would be integrated into that. Landscaping would be another one. So it's a full wrap. So that's one of the projects, when you talk about, turning the building over, commissioning the building and turning that over, that's why it's so important to get involved in the facilities organization and work out the plan as a project manager. What do you plan to do with the maintenance after I turn the building over? How can I support you on this? How can I assist you? Okay, giving them the information. Drawings would be another one. We haven't touched that. But in the maintenance side, drawings are particularly important because they're a resource. They're archives. So if they're electronic or hard drawings, incredibly important to turn over. And the last one is trash disposal. I don't have any large garbage trucks. I typically outsource all of that. Okay, I just don't have, again, the drivers, and I don't have the resources or capital to do that. However, if I was a facility, say, for instance, Palo Verde, or, well, they're not really that far from town anymore. They're building right up to them. But say, for instance, I had a water treatment facility, and I'm in the middle of, Nebraska, and then in that case there, I may have my own internal waste disposal, where I have my own landfill. Basically, I'm my own little city. So in those cases there, I would have to, alter everything that I've outsourced and bring those resources in. Okay. Service level agreements, otherwise known as SLAs. Part of the service contract is where the service expectations are formally defined. So the service expectations, and I'll go back to housekeeping, is that the trash is going to be picked up on a regular basis. Once a day, twice a week, 3 times a week. Okay? And that also includes everything from light replacements, extracting the carpeting, responding to an emergency call in regards to heat. Is it kind of warm in here? It is, isn't it? Okay. All right. Okay. Now, these are typically negotiated between the service provider and the facility's representative, such as the facility manager. So in these particular negotiations, if you will, we're going to determine what is the response time, such as elevator. I had an elevator go out of all times Friday night at 8 o'clock. 2 janitors were trapped in this elevator. All right? No. Well, actually, Jack. No, you know what? I'm being filmed. I don't want to say anything. So, yes, Jack, knock it off, Jack. So, I get a call, 8 o'clock, elevator's down. They got the custodians out, right? Part of a service level agreement with our provider is that they're going to respond within 30 minutes to look at what the problem is, okay, and then put the elevator back in service, which is exactly what they did. By 9 o'clock, the elevator was inspected, it was repaired, and was back in operation. So the elevator company met their service level agreement that we had negotiated. For me, I spent the rest of the Friday evening and the rest of the weekend enjoying my weekend, not worrying about an elevator that was out at my site. Okay, extremely important. That also contends with your electrical contractors, your mechanical contractors, and plumbing contractors. Okay, anyone that's providing you a service. The service level provider commits to a level of service, otherwise known as an LOS, and that is described through the quantitative measures and also statement of work. So on the quantitative measures is by count, by how many. How many times are we going to respond? How fast are we going to respond? When are we going to respond? And of course, the statement of work is how they're going to do it. So they gave you direct, a description on what they plan to do when they arrive to the site, what they're going to inspect for, and what they're going to do. The other item is contingency planning. If they don't have a part, do we have the authorization to air freight it in? Well, there's also a procedure with that. So if the part is critical, and I can air freight it in on a Saturday, install it on a Sunday, and then I can have that particular elevator back in operation by Monday morning. So those are going to be considered part of the statement of work as well.